who's down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, from Walmart? Who knew? Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Hersey. How are you tonight, Lauren?
I'm doing good. It is gloomy, and it feels like Halloween here. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. Yes, it is authentically fall up here in New England. In fact, I have been looking out the picture window at the house here for most of this weekend thinking, I really need to rake, and oh, look, something else I can do inside the house. So, I will get around to it eventually, but speaking of which, though, you were mentioning Halloween, and given that we are now 2 weeks out from Halloween, I thought for this week's feature, given that people seem to have enjoyed the stories we've been doing so far about Disney witches, that we talk about Disney's most famous apprentice witch, would be Eglantine Price, who was played by Angela Lansbury in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which, not coincidentally, and I found this fascinating, this is, I guess, when Eric was a boy, your husband Eric, this was his favorite Disney film? Had he shared that with you before?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's still his favorite Disney film. Wow. And I was embarrassed to tell you that, I don't think I've ever seen it in its entirety. It's one of those things that he puts on at night while we're going to sleep, and I don't know what it is about it, but I'm out. When he puts it on.
If it's any consolation, that's how well it did at the box office as well. It put audiences to sleep in 71, but we'll get to that in a moment. Also on today's show, Lauren found this amazing pile of information about Disney consumer products and its plans for the coming years. Likewise, a really fascinating look at what Disney and Macy's are doing this holiday season. So, the news portion of the show will be equally entertaining.
Jim, and I have to say, you don't even know this. I was tracking down specifics on what we're going to talk about with changes I think are coming to consumer products for... I don't know. It's maybe been 2 or 3 weeks, because it was one of those things that I just could not rest until I figured it out. So I'm really excited to share that. But before we jump in, why don't we thank our sponsor?
And of course, our sponsor for I Want That Too. This podcast is brought to you by our friends at UnlockMagic.com, the same trusted team behind the DVC rental store and DVC resale market. So if you're planning a Disney trip, they honestly have the best deals for Disney World tickets, including the lowest price for party tickets for Mickey's Very Merry this year, likewise Jollywood Night. So visit unlockmagic.com to grab the best ticket deals and make your next Disney trip just a little bit more magical. One thing though, Lauren, before we launch into the news, did want to follow up on last week's feature where we had Jim Schul on to talk about Disney and McDonald's and BioReconstruct, who's of course the flyover photographer of the Walt Disney World Resort. He wanted to remind me that we actually forgot about a McDonald's. And
we did?
We did. Now, mind you, I don't know, given that you and Eric have only just gotten recently started going to the Walt Disney Resort, but do you remember the Crossroads Shopping Center at the very edge of Disney property? This is at the end of Hotel Plaza at the intersection of State Road 535.
Give me some like buildings that I would know.
Well, here's the thing. It closed in 2021, and has since been flattened because the state of Florida, in fact, you'll be fascinated by this, Lauren, they took the property. It was one of the largest eminent domains in Florida history. They paid $198 million for the 36-acre parcel right at the edge of I-4 because they were going to build a flyover ramp that went right into Disney property. But and then after spending all of this money, state of Florida changed its mind in 2023 and like, now we'll just do a loop ramp. And so all of this property that they bought and then flattened all of the buildings, kind of pointless. But anyway, Disney back in '88 built the Crossroads Shopping Plaza here. It opens February of '89, and one of the things that they had right there at the edge of property was a classic McDonald's. Now, mind you, this wasn't one of the McDonald's that was built on property as part of that deal we were talking about with Mr. Schul, the thing that Disney cut in '96. But Lauren, this thing again sat at the crossroads of Hotel Plaza Boulevard and State Road 535 and did land office business for years. I mean, it was supposedly one of the most profitable McDonald's in the country because as people were coming off of I-4 and getting ready to go into Disney property, it was like, oh, look, there's a McDonald's. At the very least, let's stop and pee. Get a burger or that sort of thing. So it made money hand over fist, and Disney profited from this until, of course, they sold off the Crossroad Plaza back in the year 2001 to, I want to say, GE Capital Realty Group. But again, just wanted to credit BioReconstruct who reached out and said, hey, you forgot one. So, all right. So we now acknowledge it. And thanks as always for BioReconstruct for keeping us on the straight and narrow here. So, all right. Anyway, so back to this week's show, where again, you're going to take us inside on Disney consumer products in regard to what's next on the merch side of the Mouse House.
What I think is next. Mm-hmm. Based on a lot of evidence. So I want you to put your Sherlock Holmes hat on for a second. I can't think of any Disney detectives. Can you think of a Disney detective?
Well, of course.
Dick Tracy?
There's Dick Tracy, but there's also Basil of Baker Street, who, by the way, would wear the Sherlock Holmes deerstalker hat. And by the way, I actually do have a deerstalker hat. It's in the basement.
All right, well, put it on, or at least put your imaginary hat on.
All right, I will get you a photo of it later, and we can share it through social media. When you realize how big my head is, the fact that I actually found a deerstalker that fit was startling. Anyway, you were saying.
And impressive, nonetheless. So last week when we were talking all about McDonald's, I'm not sure what I was referencing, but I did tell you that, in my head at all times, it's like an active crime scene investigation, like the red yarn connecting all of the dots. And so recently...
This is why I love you, okay? I love how that mind works. So tell me, what did you discover?
Yes. Oh, I remember. It was about 6.
Okay.
And how Disney got the inspiration from Hollywood Studios' villain show. Okay, anyways. So, I'm always looking at things and reading articles to try to bring interesting, thought-provoking stories to our listeners. And I read recently, within the last, month, 2 stories that to the naked eye may have seemed unrelated. But one was an interview with Ethan Lawrence, who was just promoted. He's the new creative director for Disney Consumer Products in the Europe, Middle East, and African region. So they refer to this this in Disney Consumer Products Land is EMEA. So if I'm saying that, you get the gist.
Yep.
So the other one, which came, maybe a week later, this one was a Morningstar report, and it was showing that licensed merch sales in Europe grew by 3.4%, which it reached an impressive number, which was $80 billion, and it was outpacing inflation. So you might be wondering why I'm talking about Europe, but I'm starting to connect the dots here, and I noticed a pattern. So the creative strategy that Ethan describes in this article, he talks about, I'm going to give you some marketing buzzwords, but he says it's design-led, it's story-driven, it's culturally aware, but it sounds to me like a lot of what Disney is kind of rolling out globally. So I don't think that there's a coincidence here. So we're always talking about the actual merch, but we're not really spending a lot of time talking about the people behind the merch.
Okay.
Yeah. So where this gets interesting is the global division is run by a lady, and her name is Tasia Filipados, who used to lead the exact same region as Ethan. Okay. So I'm like, is he in place to kind of finish what she started? And so she is the president of Disney Consumer Products Games Publishing, and that is massive. So when we're looking at this, it is one of the company's biggest divisions outside of parks and streaming. So we might think it's t-shirts and mugs and, spirit jerseys or whatever, but really her team manages everything from toys, apparel, fashion, publishing, digital products, Shop Disney, and this spans 180 countries and 100 different product categories.
Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah, it's massive. I feel like we've come a long way. Remember you showed that map?
Oh, yeah.
From when consumer products first started and how it, connected everything?
Oh, yeah. We are now in the advanced algebra version of that same chart.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, it kind of even blew my mind how big it is. But anyway, so this group also oversees the hundreds or even thousands of licensing deals. So they're trying to balance their retail partnerships with their original kind of in-house things that they're doing. Because Disney, we've talked about the $60 billion that they did in licensing last year. They want to try to, be where their audience is, and it's better for them to get some through licensing than getting it all through their in-house offerings, collections. So anyways, back to these recent leadership moves. So with Ethan Lawrence's promotion, I think, like I said, he is in place to finish what Tasia was starting. And I noticed, I think, 5 areas that I think we're going to see as a big focus as we go into the new year. And it's not what we're accustomed to seeing. And I think that if we look at Europe, that you could clearly see what's going to be rolled out worldwide.
Okay, I can get behind that idea. So what are we talking about? Do we have specifics?
Yes. Okay. So the first one is collectibles and trading cards. So we've been talking a lot about this recently on the show, and the connecting of dots continues, because another article that I read, a couple weeks back was that Disney/Marvel now has a partnership with Magic the Gathering. Do you know what Magic the Gathering is?
Oh, yes. yes.
Okay, yes.
I have friends who have giant 3-ring binders. They have collected for years. They are proud of their collections, and they can beat the crap out of you in a Magic the Gathering game based on what they've gotten over the years.
Yeah, so with this particular partnership, this is through the Wizards of the Coast Universes Beyond line, and this one has Spider-Man and the Avengers, and they're doing like pop-up events, and they're doing them at some like retail locations, which I thought was fascinating because we have been talking about, remember when we did the deep dive on Disney Lorcana and like the trading card game that launched? This was with Ravensburger back in 2023, and it is massive. Like, I was looking at card values. My boss sent Miles just a box of ones he didn't need. Some of them are like $500,000 as far as collectibles go. So they're continuing to lead into the collectors. I mean, it's the same thing with like the Labubus, and we talk about Pokemon. You're getting these limited editions of pins because they want to like lean into that. And then I just saw too that Disney was even expanding its partnership with Topps. Wasn't that Michael Eisner's like sports card?
It was, yes. And for me, what's fascinating, I mean, I'm sure you've walked into your local Target some afternoon and seen that line that's formed by the cashiers, that literally people waiting for the new Pokemon cards to be stocked. I mean, again, that there's this real hunger, a real market for this, and Disney is looking to move into this space.
Yeah, and like what's funny to me is, I mean, tell me if you think this is weird because I don't collect like baseball cards, but like they have this like new crossover coming out where they're going to have like Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Goofy, and they're going to be in like Major League Baseball uniforms. Like, is that something that like people like would want to collect if you were a baseball card collector?
Okay, so is this where I tell you about how I had to go on eBay because the Boston Red Sox had this past summer a Hallmark night? And I wanted to make sure that Nancy, when she went on her Christmas cruise later this year, had the Hallmark Red Sox jersey and the Hallmark Red Sox hat, to wear when she was on the boat. So yes, there is, a bunch of us who actually buy things that are Major League Baseball that are, that lean into things like Disney or Hallmark.
All right. Well, I guess there is a market for everything, but I had to ask because I'm certainly not the expert when it comes to the sports ball game. All right. So moving on to number 2, which is they're leaning into legacy and library IP. So my fellow millennials out there, I feel like this is one you may like, or anybody. So what Disney's doing is they're bringing back older titles that fans loved like as they were growing up. So like some nostalgic brands. So they did recently limited edition Golden Girls 40th anniversary.
God, yes. And in fact, Disney Publishing kicked off as part of that. They launched a Golden Girls cozy mystery series. There were cookbooks, there were coloring books. They definitely leaned into the 40th. Any other IPs?
Yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That one was actually like a little bit more high fashion with the high snobbery. How do you say that? High snobbity?
Snobriety? All right. Well,
Snobriety? Okay. We butchered that one. All right. And then smaller runs built around Flubber. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and The Rocketeer.
And I speaking of which, all right, I just picked this up myself. This is Comic Book Creator, which is remembering Dave Stevens, the gentleman who actually drew the original Rocketeer. So yeah.
No way.
So again, I'm a weird collector. What can I tell you?
Listen, we all are.
Okay.
And, so these were limited programs. They weren't full franchise pushes. But I think that Disney is realizing and seeing value in the archives. And so, they're really trying to connect through, emotions and storytelling. So I think that we will see this continue as we move into 2026.
Okay.
And this one's a little different. I guess I could have seen it coming. But this is fashion and lifestyle collaborations. So Disney is becoming quite the series regular when it comes to mid to high end fashion. So we're thinking of things beyond just slapping Mickey Mouse's face on a t-shirt. So some recent highlights include this. Recently, there was a Disneyland Paris runway show where they were reimagining Disney princesses through a modern lens, and that kind of ties to that book series I was telling you about maybe a month ago.
Okay.
And then, they have all of these partnerships and collaborations, like Marc Jacobs Kids. This was, announced maybe a month or so ago, which has produced this very chic, minimalistic, embroidered little Mickey and Minnie designs. And then there's Zara, and they just did a 90s inspired streetwear capsule that was aimed at Gen Z, because Gen Z, from what I can understand, they like anything that feels like a retro, or it's a throwback. Lainey's always watching Full House and, Boy Meets World and that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming they're leaning into that.
Yeah, these are the same kids who actually think having a BlackBerry is cool today. It's sort of wow, okay, well, let me introduce you to my Brownie camera. So, but okay, what else we got?
All right, so now we're talking about digital integrations. So Disney is testing how fandom and retail merge together in the digital space. So Disney recently invested $1.5 billion in Epic Games to build this connected entertainment universe inside of Fortnite. Remember us talking about that?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so this is where players can explore Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars IP, and then buy digital or physical items tied together. So they just recently brought in, I'm thinking within the last month, a guy by the name of Ron Ferris. And he formerly came from Nike, and he focused on their app. And I remember reading about this before he even came to Disney. But what they were doing, Nike was saying, if you were in Fortnite, for instance, or you're in the metaverse, in the metaverse there are these, stores that you could go in, and your avatar could buy a pair of pink Nike Jordans, and then they send you the same pair in your human experience, in your real life. Right? Okay. So this is kind of...
Okay.
Is it cool, or is it freaky a little bit?
Yes and yes. The notion of something that you purchase in the virtual world that you then get a physical copy of it, that's weirdly kind of smart. That said, though, how do you manifest that? Is that 3D printers, or that's kind of interesting.
No, I think that it's just so Miles always is playing Fortnite or Roblox or whatever, and you buy whatever their currency is. So Fortnite's V-Bucks or Roblox or whatever. And so I pay real person money for him to have that digital currency that he can go in and spend, but it's still money at the end of the day that they're spending. So I think, if I had to take a guess, that is why Disney brought in Ron Ferris. He's leaning into, they're experimenting with these like timed product drops. Like, I'm sure that you're going to see some type of like Buzz Lightyear skin or something in Fortnite as we get closer.
To Toy Story 5 next June. Yes. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I would anticipate, like, now our age, our demographic, like, we probably aren't even, like, we're not paying attention to this because we're not inside the metaverse, but they're trying to get the kids while they're younger.
No,
right?
Disney, these days. I believe the term is cradle to grave. All right, just sort of you get them young, and you figure out how to hold their attention, at least till they become parents, and then they have no choice because their children are not telling them what to buy. So no, this is clever.
Right. All right. So the last one, again, you might not see or feel this specific focus, but it is around sustainability and manufacturing. So it's not front and center, right now in their marketing or marketing strategy, but they are steadily making sustainability improvements. So if you look at the company's like ESG report or like their social impact report for 2024, which would be the latest version of that type of report, they're talking about like progress in their sourcing and packaging and using more recycled materials, less plastic, smaller packaging footprints. So like to the consumer, it's quiet, but it very much aligns with younger consumers. So think again like Gen Z and what they expect from big brands right now and moving forward.
So interesting you say that, because I think anybody who's been buying things from Amazon over the past year or so has noticed how, their packaging has changed. Again, you mentioned bigger brands and, same thing. The Amazons of the world are looking at sustainability as something that, again, their younger consumers are genuinely interested in. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, bringing this thing full circle, I think what they're leaning into is collectibles, nostalgia, the digital integration to hit across all demographics. And I think that if I had to take a guess, this is Lauren Hersey saying it, that they're tightening their focus. Like, so they're moving more away from just mass merchandising and just being more deliberate and making things that are more meaningful.
No, I did. So not just more stuff, smarter stuff.
Exactly. And I think we're going to see more high-end collabs, and we're going to talk about one of the big ones coming up, I think in our next episode. But they want to be visible where people are. So they want to be visible in culture. They want to be visible in collector programs that are like building that return purchase and loyalty. And they're obviously like they have to be cognizant about how their products are made, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at like the film and streaming divisions of the company, it's a rocky road and there's lots of ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
And Disney desperately needs consumer products to remain a reliable source of revenue. I mean, like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I mean, if you don't adapt, you kind of die. So like, I'm happy to see that Disney is, leaning into some of these, new directions. And I don't know, Jim, I think it's smart. What do you think?
I don't know. I thought that this was fascinating. And thank you for your crime scene like mine, doing all this homework.
Super sleuthery.
Yeah, no, so, well, all right. Now, and coming up next, folks, Lauren's going to shine a spotlight on what Macy's and Disney are going to be doing for their holiday season. But before we do that, there's this.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day. Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Don't chew on that, Max.
Cooper loves that chew, too.
Oh, now he's into Cooper's food. Wow, he is loving it. What do you feed Cooper?
Blue Buffalo Life Protection Formula. He never leaves a crumb. I love it because it's made with high-quality protein, nutrient-rich fruits and veggies, and wholesome whole grains.
Looks like we're switching to Blue.
Blue Buffalo foods are made with the superior ingredients your dog needs to thrive. Can your dog food say that? Visit feedbluefood.com to learn more.
And we're back. And Lauren, you're about to talk about Disney and Macy's and their 2025 holiday collection, which over 120 products that cross apparel, jewelry, home decor, and beauty. And this time around they're celebrating Minnie Mouse, but that's actually a continuation from last year, right? Which is when, Macy's and Disney's partnered on that brand new Minnie Mouse balloon that was featured in the Thanksgiving Day parade, right?
Yes, exactly. And if you want a deep dive on Disney's long-standing relationship with Macy's, we did do that around this time last year, so go and check that out. But yes, Minnie Mouse is the centerpiece of the collection. It's a big one. I guess the biggest piece of this, I guess if you're a woman, that one of the big collabs within the edition is with MAC Cosmetics, and there's lots. But the big deal is that MAC's most popular lipstick is called Ruby Woo, and they're gonna have a Minnie Woo lipstick during this.
Okay.
I just thought that was funny. But there are some pretty bougie brands, like we talked about that mid to high-end fashion with Stony Clover Lane, Bauble Bar, Citizen Watches. Obviously, we got Loungefly. So lots and lots of Minnie. And I was super curious, and I must have missed about the balloons. I did see Minnie was coming back, but this year we're also getting a new Buzz Lightyear.
We are, and again, we were talking just earlier in today's show about it's Toy Story 5 coming out June of 2026, and this is I want to say it's a new pose. It's a new, totally new balloon, and again, it's there to hype the Pixar film that'll be coming out next summer.
But how many Buzz Lightyear balloons have we seen over the years? I wish we could have.
That's interesting. Did I ever tell you the story about? I want to say it was D23, might have been 2013. I actually stayed up all night with the folks from the Macy's Parade Studio, which they had flown out from their warehouse in New Jersey. They brought the Buzz Lightyear balloon with them, and they spent the night inflating it. So with the idea that at 5 o'clock in the morning Californian time, which would be 8 o'clock out in New York, start of the second hour on Good Morning America, John Lasseter was going to stand out front of the Anaheim Convention Center with Buzz Lightyear behind him and talk about how the D23 Expo for that year was just about to open. And spent the entire night with these guys as they systematically inflated all 35 compartments in Buzz's body, and it got weirdly specific. It's like, his butt is 2/3 full. Okay, move on to the right thigh. And it's just sort of like because you have to sort of balance these things out as you do them.
But so we're also getting Spider-Man is coming back as well. Mm-hmm. So we got, for Disney is representing, I'm sure they'll have something with the cruise line, since that's a big focus.
Sure.
But if you're interested in this collection, they do have some really cool items. I mean, I spent probably too much time looking through them, but that is enough for Christmas for now. On to Halloween, since we're just a few weeks away?
Yes. And as we mentioned at the top of today's show, this time of year, when you turn on ABC Family or if you're home with Disney Plus, people are looking for something else other than Hocus Pocus to watch. What other witches does Disney have? And as we mentioned, they have Eglantine Price, who, was this character that was introduced in Disney's Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which arrived in theaters back in December of 1971. We want to thank Eric Hersey for suggesting the story idea. But how did this effects-filled movie musical that puts Lauren to sleep? Very interesting. How did this movie get made by the Mouse House? Story starts with a book that was written by English author Mary Norton, who, by the way, if you're a fan of fantasy, you probably already know that name, because back in 1952, Ms. Norton wrote the first volume of the Borrowers series, which then became hugely popular, and so much so that Mary went on to write 4 additional books set in the world of the Borrowers. But we're not here to talk about that series of children's novels. Today's story is about a book that Norton wrote 9 years before The Borrowers, and this book, Lauren, was called The Magic Bedknob, or How to Be a Witch in 10 Easy Lessons. Norton writes this back in 1943, which, by the way, World War II is still well underway in Europe and Asia. Now, what's interesting about The Magic Bedknob is the war is only mentioned in passing, 2 times to be specific. Carrie, Charlie, and Paul Wilson have been sent for the summer out to stay in Bedfordshire, which is in the eastern section of England to the north of London, with their elderly aunt Beatrice. And the reason for this is, as the story is getting started, the war is still ongoing, and the Blitz is happening in London, but mother and father of the Wilson children have decided to stay behind in London, and Eglantine Price, our apprentice witch, well, she lives in the same village just a few houses away from Aunt Beatrice. By the way, Eglantine, when she enters the story, she, in a different from the Disney movie, she practices magic as a hobby, not because she's trying to help with the war effort. Eglantine mentions that she was once tempted to use her magic to double her butter ration, and that's sort of referring to the fact that during World War II, Lauren, food was rationed. But again, if we had Eric here on the podcast with us now, he'd be going, now, wait a minute, where are the Nazis? Where's the half the spell book? Where's Emilius Brown? Well, none of that was in The Magic Bedknob. Now, mind you, in 1945, Walt Disney Productions acquires the film rights to Norton's book. And Lauren, I'm half convinced that Walt only bought this book for the subtitle. It's like, How to Be a Witch in 10 Easy Lessons. It's like, oh, man, I want to make that.
He understood being viral back then.
There we go. But anyway, 1947, Mary writes a sequel to, or rather a continuation of The Magic Bedknob. This book is called Bonfires and Broomsticks, and it introduces Emilius Jones, who's a necromancer from the 17th century. And Walt he automatically gets the movie rights to Bonfires and Broomsticks due to language in the earlier contract when Disney Studios acquired the Magic Bedknob. Anyway, if we jump ahead to 1957, both of Norton's stories involving Eglantine Price get combined into one single volume, an omnibus edition called Bedknob and Broomstick. And what's interesting, Lauren, is because at the time it was felt that if you had a children's book that included references to World War II, it would then make the book dated. They actually took all of them out of this book. Anyway, jump ahead to April of 1960. Disney and P.L. Travers sign a preliminary agreement which will, in theory, allow the studio to make a Mary Poppins movie. But as we shift into 1961, Lauren, negotiations are dragging on with P.L. Travers. She's a pain in the ass, all right? That's okay. And so Walt, at this point, turns to the Sherman Brothers, who've been working on songs for Mary Poppins, and they're concerned, well, what's going to happen to all these songs we wrote if she doesn't sign the contract? And he's like, don't worry, boys. We got the film rights to this other fantasy book, very similar to Mary Poppins. I mean, and if Travers winds up tripping us up here, don't worry about it. We'll just take a lot of the score that you've already written for Mary Poppins and then use it for this other project. And by the way, just in case this actually happens, that P.L. Travers in the end decides not to give Disney Studios the rights to make a Mary Poppins movie, Walt asked Don DeGrady, who's a veteran gag man and story guy at Disney. By the way, he's also the screenwriter for Mary Poppins. Walt asked Don, work up a treatment for a possible Bedknob and Broomstick movie. So Don uses the original version of the Magic Bedknob as his jumping off point, and he likes that version of the story when it's set during World War II. But he works at simplifying the story setup. Aunt Beatrice is eliminated. Now Carrie, Charles, and Paul are orphans who've been evacuated out of London at the start of World War II, and they're assigned to live with Eglantine Price, who lives in this remote cottage in Pepperidge, which is this fictitious coastal village in Dorset. That's a county in southwestern England, Lauren, that borders on one side with the English Channel. And where Don really deviated from the Mary Norton Magic Bedknob storyline is, well, DeGrady had always been fascinated by this story that came out of World War II, that reportedly all throughout the war, Lauren, there was this group of British witches that would periodically get together and then perform a ritual that then supposedly prevented the Nazis from ever crossing the English Channel, which, again, weird story, but remember, how many of Spielberg's Indiana Jones films dealt with, Hitler's obsession with the occult? This is just kind of a whole aspect of World War II that rarely gets talked about. But anyway, Don takes that idea, the witches performing the ritual that protects England, and then makes that Eglantine's whole motivation for the movie version of Bedknobs and Broomsticks. She now isn't studying magic as a hobby, but rather because she sincerely wants to do her part with the war effort. So, to give Eglantine someone other than the kids, Carrie, Charles, and Paul, to interact with, DeGrady takes the Emilius Jones character from Bonfires and Broomsticks and changes him from a 17th century necromancer to a con man in the 1940s, who now calls himself Professor Emilius Brown, the headmaster of a correspondence college of witchcraft. And Brown starts off as Ms. Price's antagonist in the movie, and over the course of 2 hours of screen Eglantine eventually becomes her ally and love interest. But what drives the plot of what DeGrady dreamed up for Bedknobs and Broomsticks was the pursuit of the spell for substitutionary locomotion, which, by the way, is similar to the name of a spell that Eglantine uses in Bonfires and Broomsticks, the book, to save necromancer Emilius Jones from being burned at the stake back in the 17th century. So, anyway, as Eric will tell you, because this is the highlight of the movie, Lauren, the part you sleep through, Eglantine uses substitutionary locomotion to repel a Nazi raid on, Pepperidge Isle. They take a sub over and they cross the English Channel, and and Eglantine uses a museum full of armor to kick the Nazis' butts. But anyway, Don hands the script treatment into Walt. Walt likes what he sees. He then hands the DeGrady script treatment off to the Sherman Brothers, and then asks them to write a few new songs based on this material. And by the way, Lauren, if you Google Don DeGrady Eglantine, there is this hilarious cartoon that Don actually drew of when the Sherman Brothers are pitching a song to Walt, to include in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and it's the song about Eglantine Price. And evidently, Walt had a rough night the night before, because as they're pitching him the song, Walt fell asleep. And Don thought this was so hilarious, he actually drew a cartoon at that moment of here's the Sherman Brothers energetically singing their brand new song, and here's Walt Disney asleep in a chair next to the piano. So,
and Walt.
Well, there we go. All right. Anyway, by May of 1961, P.L. Travers has finally officially signed a contract that formally grants Walt Disney Productions the rights to make a movie based on Mary Poppins. So the Sherman Brothers stop working on Bedknobs and Broomstick and concentrate fully on the Mary Poppins movie. That goes into production May of 63. It is released to theaters in 1964. It is an enormous hit, Lauren. And not only that, it is an award winner. April of 1965, Mary Poppins takes home 5 Academy Awards. Julie Andrews is recognized as Best Actress for her portrayal of the title character. The song Chim Chim Cheree is the best song of the year. A film also gets Best Score, Best Visual Effects, and Best Editing. Now, Walt at the time flat out says that Walt Disney Studios will not be making a Mary Poppins sequel. I think we've actually talked on this podcast about what happened with the Three Little Pigs back in the 30s. That Walt tried to make cartoons that were sequels to the Three Little Pigs, and they weren't nearly as popular as the original. Now, so again, that's the whole Walt. You can't top pigs with pigs, but. That said, Walt was not opposed to making another Mary Poppins-like musical fantasy, something that would mix animation and visual effects. So, and after all, Don DeGrady and the Sherman Brothers had already done all this work on a movie that could be based on Mary Norton's Bedknob and Broomstick. So it would be a shame for that material to go to waste. April of 1966, Disney announces that the Magic Bedpost, which, Lauren, has to be the worst name for a film I've ever heard in my entire life, is that Disney Studios announced that is being prepped for production. But then, December of 66, Walt dies. And all sorts of projects that were in the works at Walt Disney Productions at that time get placed on hold as the executives that Walt left behind now try to figure out, well, what actually does a post-Walt version of Disney Studios? What is that like? And more to the point, where is this Magic Bedpost movie going to fit in with all of that? And what happens next, we'll get to in a sec. But first, this.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The all-new 2026 Hyundai Palisade Hybrid doesn't just turn heads. It commands respect. With its stunning exterior, luxurious interior with available captain seats, and spacious third-row seating and equipped with advanced technology, you and the family are making a statement before you even step out. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more and experience the all-new 2026 Palisade Hybrid today.
Dripping in gold? That's cool. Dripping in Velveeta's supremely creamy golden cheesiness? That's respect. Elevate your drip with Velveeta's range of outrageously delicious dips and dishes. Shells, cheese, melty blocks, and heat and eat queso that go all in on indulgence. Flex on your fam with a creamy, cheesy masterpiece and go all in on what you love with Velveeta. Respect the drip and satisfy your cravings. Bring home the drip with Velveeta.
And we're back. So, picking up, Lauren, where we left off, Disney Studio announces the Magic Bedpost. Again, terrible title. The movie version of Mary Norton's Bedknobs and Broomsticks is going into active development April of '66. Then 8 months later, Walt Disney dies. Lots of projects are placed on hold as Walt's brother Roy O. Disney mourns. By the way, Roy was actively getting ready to retire at this moment, Lauren. So he now has to put all of those plans on hold. You know, a year-long cruise around the world with his wife, and come run Disney Studios in Walt's absence. And in the meantime, Don DeGrady has taken that script treatment that he wrote 5 years earlier, back in '61, and is now developing a full-fledged screenplay based on the Magic Bedpost. Now, mind you, as he's working on the script, Lauren, he deliberately sets this movie story in the late summer, early fall of 1940, just as the Blitz is happening in the skies over London. I don't know how much World War II history you know, Lauren, but for 56 nights in a row, that city was under aerial assault as the Luftwaffe flew over and performed these systematic bombing missions. I mean, death and destruction rained down on from above on London. And what's interesting about DeGrady's original script for what is now being called Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Thank goodness.
Okay, it has a sequence where Eglantine Price and those 3 orphan children are flying high above London on that flying bed just as one of these bombing raids is going on. And Lauren, if you want, I can send you the storyboards. An artist at the studio shared them with me once. But there are actual storyboards that Disney artists drew up for this early version of Bedknobs and Broomsticks that showed this bed first avoiding a German Messerschmitt, and then just as Miss Price and the kids, get out of the way, they're then almost hit by the RAF Spitfire that's in hot pursuit and actively shooting at this very same Messerschmitt. And now I got to tell you, prior to production, this particular scene got cut out of Bedknobs and Broomsticks because at the time anyway, there were people at Disney who were like, Don, that's a little too real,
You think? Besides the people flying on a bed.
Well, yeah, just the notion of, we're trying to make a fun fantasy film here for the family, and you got them being fired at by first the Germans and then the RAF. Now, mind you, the Blitz is still mentioned, at least in passing, in Bedknobs and Broomstick. In fact, this is the reason that Charlie, Carrie, and Paul are now orphans, because their parents were supposedly killed off screen during the bombing of London. And as for Professor Emilius Brown, he has this lovely home in the center of London, and as he points out to Eglantine at one point, well, the reason I have this lovely home in the center of London is that, well, this giant bomb fell into the garden in front of the building, and the original occupant of this house fled because he thought it was going to blow up, but I think it's a dud. So I took, I commandeered the house. Anyway, what's ironic about this, Lauren, is while the Blitz was a little too real for Disney executives in the late 60s, early 70s, when Bedknobs and Broomsticks was getting ready to be produced at Disney Studios. If we jump now ahead to the late 1990s, early 2000s, to Return to Neverland, which was this Peter Pan sequel that Disney put out into theaters February of 2002, produced, by the way, by Disney Toon Studios. This movie, Lauren, actually has a scene where the Jolly Roger, Captain Hook's pirate ship, has traveled to London so that Hook's crew can now kidnap Wendy's daughter, Jane. But as they're leaving London and they're flying high above the Thames, the same thing from Bedknobs and Broomsticks. The Captain Hook ship finds itself in between a German fighter and an RAF fighter, who are blasting at one another as they're trying to get back to Neverland. So just interesting that idea never died and then resurfaced in an animated film, no less. All right. So anyway, look, but let's be clear here. The reason that Don DeGrady was putting things like this into Bedknobs and Broomstick is he had written Mary Poppins, and he wanted this movie to be different than Mary Poppins. I mean, be Mary Poppins-like, but to have enough stuff that people wouldn't go, well, that's kind of a cheat. That's kind of a copy. Whereas veteran Disney Studios producer Bill Walsh, I mean, he's looking over the script that Don has cobbled together out of these two Mary Norton books, and he's thinking, I think we need to make this movie a little more like Mary Poppins. And to Bill's way of thinking, what made Mary Poppins so memorable to moviegoers were things like that Jolly Holiday scene where, Bert and Mary sing and dance and get to interact with all those animated animals. So Walsh quietly goes to the Sherman Brothers and says, look, I need a number like Jolly Holiday, something that's going to allow Amelius and Eglantine to sing and dance together, that in a setting that ideally we could do with animation. You guys got anything? And Richard M. and Robert B. Sherman, so that they take a look at Don's first draft of the screenplay. And towards the middle, there's this moment where Eglantine, Amelius, and the kids are on that flying a bed again, and they're now traveling to the island of Naboombu, where they have to seek out the fabled Star of Astaroth. And so what Dick and Bob do is they go to Bill and say, well, look, as they're flying into the island, could they come up short? Could they maybe crash land in the lagoon that's out in front of Naboombu? And Bill's like, yeah, sure. Why? He says, well, we got this song that we wrote for Mary Poppins. I mean, you remember we had that scene in the movie, the magic compass scene, where Mary took Bert and Jane and Michael to all of these far-flung corners of the world, by spinning the dial on the thing. And one of the places they went was the South Pacific. And they went to the bottom of the ocean in the South Pacific. And we wrote this song called The Beautiful Briny. So if you can have the bed land in the lagoon, we can put Beautiful Briny in this movie. And by the way, Lauren, what's kind of interesting is there was another song written for this magic compass scene that, by the way, you've heard. It made it into a Disney animated film, The Jungle Book. In fact, do you remember the scene where Kaa, the snake, is hypnotizing Mowgli, singing a song called Trust in Me.
Yes.
Well, what the Sherman Brothers did was they took the song they wrote, The Land of Sand, and just changed the lyrics. So it went from being The Land of Sand to Trust in Me. And by the way, that helped make Jungle Book, which came out in October of 1967, one of the biggest hits animated hits that Disney had had in years. And this is what gave the gentlemen who were running Disney Studios in the immediate wake of Walt's death the confidence, like, well, all right, they like that. Okay, all right, let's do this Bedknobs and Broomsticks thing. Now, mind you, this ambitious visual effects filled musical with animation would be the most ambitious thing that Disney Studios had attempted to date. The most expensive movie at that time that Disney had made as well. I mean, we're talking, Lauren, a whopping $6.3 million, which, by the way, is $1.2 million more than Disney had spent on making Mary Poppins back in '63. But
oh wow!
But here's now the question: who does Disney get to play Eglantine Price in Bedknobs and Broomsticks? Because executives running the Mouse House had a lot of very different ideas when it came to the casting of this key role in this motion picture, up to and including asking Julie Andrews to come back to Disney Studios to play this brand new character. And we will get to that part of this story, all the casting challenges that Disney faced on this project, on next week's edition of I Want That Too.
All right, Jim. Well, you got me invested. Now I want to know what's next, and I'll try to stay awake for it leading up to Halloween.
Okay.
But on that note, I do think it's time we close up shop for today.
I agree, Lauren. And if you want to keep up on everything happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, please follow us on social, and don't forget to check out our Patreon for bonus shows and early access.
Yes, and if you have a question or an idea for a future episode, please shoot us a message, Jim at jimhillmedia.com and Lauren at laurenhersey.com. We absolutely love hearing from you. But on that note, that is it for today's show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.